a strategic spot in the city. El Castillo de la Real Tuerza stands on the other side of the harbor. Built at the end of the 16th century, it was used as the residence for the colonial governors. Today, it houses the National Museum. The Giraldia and its weather vane. This small bronze statue is Havana's symbol. Surrounded by the old town, La Plaza de Armas is Havana's oldest square. Its name dates back to the end of the 16th century. At that time, the Spanish troops performed their maneuvers here. The square, as seen today, dates from 1773, during the time of the Marquis de Torrente's rule. It's a symbol of the city, bringing together religious, political, and military colonial powers. A statue of Carlos Manuel de Céspedes stands in the middle of a small park. It replaces that of King Ferdinand VII and was erected in 1954. Today, the park is a popular spot for Cubans who come to stroll through the stalls of booksellers. The square surrounding the cathedral was known as Marimelena Square in the 17th and 18th centuries. At that time, the square was frequently flooded by rainwater which ran down to the bay. The surrounding marshes have long since been drained, but a wooden bridge which once spanned them still remains. The square grew in importance in the 18th century with the construction of St. Ignatius's Church by the Jesuits. With the foundation of the Havana Diocese in 1789, the church became a cathedral dedicated to the Immaculate Conception. It has been restored numerous times since. Christopher Columbus's tomb was at one time in a recess of the main chapel. After more than a century of disagreements, his remains were eventually relocated to a cathedral in Seville. Today, the same recess houses priceless manuscripts, paintings, statues, and liturgical clothing, which date from the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. At the end of the 19th century, the Prado, which later became the Paseo de Marti, was Havana's most aristocratic avenue. Cubans enjoyed strolling along the shady avenues among the numerous fountains, admiring the bronze lions which stood at the street corners. Today, the area is just as popular, but the pastel-colored colonial buildings are beginning to show their age, a sight which is even more frequent in modern-day Havana. It seems that until recently, Castro's government took little interest in the historic heritage of the city and the island as a whole. This was no doubt because of Cuba's past luxury and debaucheries. It was also possibly due to the lack of appropriate funds. San Jose Street and the imposing Gran Teatro. This building, with its sculpted facade and four pinnacles surrounded by angels, dates back to 1833. Inaugurated in 1929, a copy of the Capitol in Washington is located next door. It's one of the most outstanding buildings which remains in Havana from the American period. The 2.5-mile-long Malecon, which stretches around the bay along with the Vedado Quarter, are a reminder of this period. Once beautiful colonial villas with sea views still stand. The bright yellow, pink, and pale green house fronts have long since faded in the harsh sun. Abandoned by their former occupants, they have since been squatted by countless families. Even so, a certain charm can still be found. As in the American period, nightlife centers around the Malecon and the Rampa in the Vedado district. During the 30s, the area was nicknamed the American Brothel. Havana had become a city where vice ran wild under the corrupt government controlled by the American mafia. Under American influence, the pious Spanish city with its ancient traditions had in a few years adopted the American way of life. In appearances, everything changed during the period when the dollar ruled, but in truth, the Cubans themselves had gotten little pleasure from this American dream. The revolutionary movement had been around for 10 years when, in 1959, they upset Batista's government. The revolution was headed most notably by Fidel Castro and Ernesto Guevara, known as Che. The team of Barbudas, which took power, put an end to the excesses the city had known with the Americans. First driven by nationalism and socialism, then later in 1961 by Marxists,